So the market match program here in California had only been in farmers markets up to this point, but one of the grantees did get approved by USDA for that type of use.
Excellent.
So it would be eligible for CSA deliveries.
Because what was amazing about that, we run groups with young girls and we're talking about nutrition centered mining, you know, it's exposure. And, you know, inner city Angelino, I was a young mother. I wasn't young, but I was young in my motherhood experience. Would get a box of vegetables that I didn't know what they were. And so just in terms of exposure and support of healthier eating options, sometimes that process where you're getting seasonal vegetables, you don't get to pick the same broccoli, that's what you recognize in the farmer's market, so that's what you pick, was just an amazing experience. To have to figure it out and ask somebody and learn how to cook bok choy, or I don't even remember what they all were. So I was hopeful that that kind of opportunity was available.
It is.
Thank you both for coming today and presenting the investment opportunities, and they will be taken into consideration by the subcommittee. I'm sorry.
One last comment. I'm sorry. You keep spurring more thoughts. You know, you say 1 in 6 are hungry in the state of California. And so we've got, you know, 6 to 7 million people every night that you labeled it, how did you label it? I guess it's
food insecure.
Food insecure. Yeah. That's another way of saying they're starving, they're hungry, you know, and we've got to do everything we can to help these families. So you talked about these markets, the farmers markets, which, you know, there's maybe 700 of them. 700 to serve 6 million people, of course, is virtually impossible. Have you ever thought about how you could reach these people in, I hate to say it, swap meets, but at these swap meets that people regularly go to on a weekend basis, and there's a lot of fresh produce providers there. Is there any way to organize the benefit of signing them up in an environment like that?
We haven't tested it, but we'd be happy to meet with your staff or whoever to explore that idea. Okay. Yeah.
Especially in like I was raised in the Orange County area, and there's a swap meet off the 5 freeway and just past the Orange County border that is very popular every weekend, and there is tremendous produce. I bet you that 20% of what's sold in that swap meet is probably produce, and it's much less expensive than you can get in the market to begin with. I'm sure many of them may be willing to sign up for a program like this. I just throw out the possibility of other sources of availability to market yourself. So,
thank you.
Public comment on the investment proposals?
Good afternoon, Rebecca De La Rosa with Latino Coalition for a Healthy California. And for us, one of the concerns that we're really focusing on right now is the type 2 diabetes rates in our communities. For the Latino community, our children have a 50% chance to grow up to have type 2 diabetes, and we're very supportive of this proposal. And as Senator Monning mentioned, making sure that we have those opportunities for our communities to purchase healthy fresh fruits and vegetables will be very important in fighting diabetes rates. And we feel this is a very modest proposal and is necessary in order to make sure that the federal government continues their commitment in investing in our communities. So we look forward to your consideration.
Thank you very much. Next witness.
Chair and members, Kathy Mossberg, representing the California Food Policy Advocates as well as the Public Health Institute, want to go on record in supporting both of these proposals. Obviously, they're proposals that deal with the hunger needs of California that, as we know here and have heard today, are quite great. All of these do help people to relieve hunger, relieve obesity, and all of those things that we want to deal with as it relates to preventable disease and services. So thank you.
Thank you. Next witness.
Thank you. Jessica Bartholow with the Western Center on Law and Poverty, also in support of both of these proposals, and grateful for the conversation, the sincere and very concerned conversation in the Senate committee today. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Moving on.
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
I just would like to have a discussion with the two of us, the three of us, if I could. You know, in government, you know, we live by programs that are in existence, and we try to make them work for our constituents. And when you recognize a need as important as this, where all of us never want to see anybody go to bed hungry, especially our children, especially our senior citizens. And so I see a number of issues here. We believe that it's important that our constituents, those that are don't have the financial resources to get fresh food, which is healthy food. And at the same time, I'm hearing that we have 60% of our population is obese. So when I was in junior high school, and maybe Senator Monning participated in these programs, maybe you did, I think I'm a little bit older than you, we had what was called the Presidential Physical Fitness Award. Okay? Oh, God. Okay, so you are president. Anyway, there was obviously much more active requirements for physical education in the school system when I was going to school than exist today. So what again, trying to think out of the box, how can we incentivize CalFresh to work with our public school system to provide enhancements, if you want to call them that, if the school districts can qualify that they are pursuing and advancing physical education mandatory programs, and in addition to that, there's got to be some type of mutual reward for each entity. Combining the brilliance, if you will, of CalFresh, the public school system. We want the kids to eat fresh. We want the kids to lead more healthy lives, but we've got to get them to do physical education, a physical program of activity, participating in sports, participating in Governor Brown's Physical Fitness Award or something. We've got to come up with some program to reward a healthy lifestyle.
So if I may make a suggestion, that this be an issue that the three of us commit to holding a hearing during interim.
Okay.
Senator Monty and I had a painful experience in Senate Health Committee yesterday talking about just the issue of obesity and how we create a culture shift amongst all Californians on addressing the issue. And I acknowledge that this institution has a spotty history at best in terms of confronting the issue and making a decision, a willful decision to take action. So I would suggest, because I don't know that I necessarily see the CalFresh school connection, but maybe, school lunch program, physical activity connection. But I think an informational hearing that this subcommittee can certainly convene during interim to shed to light for us decisions this body has made during tough fiscal times that has reduced physical ed requirements. Because, we'll be competing with educators who say, with all of this Common Core curriculum, with all the new requirements, they've cut into both lunchtime, because I'm hearing from the nutritionists in my district that all the work we did to put salad bars in schools, that the lunch hour has been truncated so that they see them throwing whole fruits and vegetables and salads away because they don't have time to consume it. So I think there are a lot of complicated issues that the onus should be on us to really have a common frame of reference about the current lay of the land before we figure out what we have to do about it, in all honesty. And yes, I had the presidential thing, and I still haven't climbed up the rope and hit the bell at the ceiling 50 years later.
If we can attack these problems early by seeing how these programs can augment each other, we actually save costs for the state in the future, because if you look at just the cost of type 2 diabetes, the most common reason why these kids have type 2 diabetes is because they're overweight.
Please don't make Senator Monty and I relive our experience yesterday. It was painful, and we agree with you.
But the cost of taking care of these future adults is staggering.
I agree.
Where if we can make an educational investment with our CalFresh dollars, maybe there's a partnership there. You would better understand, having been here in the legislature. I just throw out the idea that you have to have a healthy diet, and you have to have exercise if you want to have good health in this country.
And I think it's a perfect interim hearing topic where we're not confined by kind of what's in the budget. We're not looking at a specific piece of legislation, where we can have an amazing, Republicans, Democrats, what do you call that?
Bipartisan.
Bipartisan conversation about a critical public health issue. I agree. Senator Monty.
And I just want to lend my support for that idea. And if I might recommend, as we structure that agenda, could we invite Governor Brown and Governor Christie maybe to do a push-up contest at the beginning of the hearing?
And if we sell tickets, we could fund market match. Because I'll buy some of those tickets to watch that. So does that meet your need, Senator Stone? So we'll begin to have that conversation. I think that's a great idea, and I will be there with bells on, as long as you don't have a rope that I have to climb to the ceiling of the gym. My heart fluttered even having that memory of trying to, it was awful. Thank you very much. Let's move on to Department of Social Services, Employment Development Data Sharing. Why don't we have, if there is room, I don't know if it's the same people, folks come forward also for 5180 0530, the State Hearings Division. Is that a different group, same group?
Little bit different.
Okay, let's come on up. And then we should be more disciplined ourselves, Senator Stone, in terms of doing our own stretch breaks during these marathon hearings that we convene. I'm inconsistent, as in all things exercise related in my life. All right. Employment Development Data Sharing, Trailer Bill 604.
Right. To your, again, Todd Bland again, to your question on page 29, EDD and the Department of Social Services exchange quite a bit of data, and the usual purpose is to use that EDD earnings data to ascertain the specific earnings of foster youth, of CalWORKs clients, of anybody involved in the welfare to work system or involved in subsidized employment. And the data also supports evaluations that we're doing, such as the legislatively mandated and contracted out RAND study of the CalWORKs program and the SB 1041 changes. Also the work that we're doing in our own internal evaluation of subsidized employment. We need that EDD data. Up to now, the interagency agreement between EDD and CDSS has relied on sort of general statutory authority, but EDD more recently wants to see kind of explicit authority to share that data. And we're pleased to say we were able to reach agreement with EDD on how that language should read. And we also, there was a letter from the Federal Department of Labor indicating their support as well, and that letter was shared with staff. We urge you to support this trailer bill.
Thank you very much. It's any comments from LAO or Finance? Are you coming for public comment? For the trailer bills? Yes, public comment, please.
Thank you, Western Center on Law and Poverty, in support, and really pleased that we're finally having this happen in a way that could be supportive, I think, for both people. Thank you.
Thank you, and it's staff recommendation that we hold this item open. Moving on to State Hearings Division, the Health and Human Services Agency, Office of Systems Integration. Overview of the State Hearing Division, first informational, then we'll hear about BCP number 2.
Right. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll ask Chief Judge Manuel Romero to start.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, Senator Monty and Senator Stone. Thank you for the opportunity to come and provide an overview. And I'll focus specifically on the question that was asked, which is provide an overview of the function of state hearings, brief overview of the function of State Hearings Division, and the structure, the timeliness requirements, and the penalties for not meeting them. So I'll do that, but I'm also going to report what I think is some good news as part of providing the overview. The State Hearings Division is responsible for providing the fair hearings for all of the programs that are administered by the Department of Social Services, except for the Community Care Licensing Division. And we also are responsible for providing the fair hearings for the Medi-Cal programs that are administered by Department of Health Care Services. And as a result of the Affordable Care Act being implemented in California, and by the passage of AB 617, which amends with W&I code, we are now also the appeals entity for all of the appeals that arise from the Cover California and the expansion of the Medicaid program, which was also part of the ACA. Our function is to ensure that we provide hearings and issue timely decisions. Federal law requires that for the CalFresh program, that we issue a decision within 60 days from the date of the hearing request. And for all other programs, it's 90 days from the hearing request. We came 2 budget cycles ago, and we were involved in a process of several years demonstrating how the gap that we had between resources or capacity and workload, which was really contributing to a high level of penalties, and that also, in the absence of resources, was going to continue to grow exponentially. And that has to do primarily because of the court orders and the formula that the court orders put forth. And very briefly, and I've gone through this in prior years, so I'm going to try and be as concise as I can with the explanation of the penalty structure, just to remind everyone what it is. There's 2 parts. There's an overall 95% timeliness that we have to meet for each of the programs that fall under the court order, which is IHSS, CalFresh, CalWorks, and Medi-Cal. And that 95% is each month. And for each month that we meet it, we get to reduce, if we are above $10, we get to reduce it by $2.50. If we are not meeting 95%, we're below it, 94.9 or less, then it increases by $2.50. And that happens like in a ladder. It increases by month until you reach a maximum of $100 a day in penalties, or you're at the minimum of $5. We, as a result of the resources that were provided with the budget effective July 1, 2013, as well as by the limited term resources that were provided with the budget effective July 1, 2014, are happy to report that as of today, and I'm going to quickly, and this is providing the information that is attached to the agenda, or included in the agenda, what our penalties look like from when we were here July 1, or in July of 2013, to where we're at today. Our current penalty rates for CalWorks are $20 per day, which is down from $62.50 on 7/1/13. CalFresh is at $5, which is down from $30 from on 7/1/13. Medi-Cal is down to $72.50 from $100, which was the maximum in 7/13. And IHSS is down to $82.50 from $100. So we are on course to be able to bring down in all of these programs to between $5 and $10 by the end of 2017. And we've included a chart that includes that projection. Now, of course, what impacts the ability of that progress to continue is if there's a spike, a major spike or substantial spike that occurs in workload as a result of either a program change by statute or as a result of a court order. And we're always very closely monitoring for those, because those are the big spikes that can dramatically impact our ability to be timely. We also monitor for when there's blips. And if you'll notice in the chart, there was a blip in March, and we look at very closely internally what's going on there, because we want to make sure that we identify what the cause for a blip in the daily penalty rate from one month to the next would have been. That allows us to make sure that we're working with our partners in the case of the counties that implement all the state programs, including the Medi-Cal programs, and we're now with Covered California, that we're also working with them to ensure that there's timeliness throughout the entire process. And we also try to be aware of the landscape to see if there's anything that's coming down the pike that we should be aware of, so that we can be preventative, because the key to avoiding penalties is for us to ensure that we have sufficient capacity to meet that 95%, because that is the key to us being able to sustain penalties at a low level. In terms of the total number of dollars, we had indicated before that if we did not get resources, that we were looking at up to $20 million, and this is back in when we asked for the BCP for 13-14, that we would projecting up to $20 million, because we would have hit $100 per day in all of those categories. But if we got it, we indicated that we estimated that we would be able to, over a period of 3.5 to 4 years, reach 5 to 10 in all the programs. I'm happy to report that we're on course for that. We're monitoring very closely what's happening with the Affordable Care Act. That is a new program, and it's, as everyone knows, there's been glitches in implementation, and those glitches have caused some bottlenecks, and we're working very closely with our partners in Covered California and also with Department of Healthcare Services in terms of the bottlenecks created by the implementation, some of which are technical due to the calc-HERES and SAW issues. Others are due to the, on the Medi-Cal side, the inability of the counties to be able to get onto the med system and enter information that relates to when there's a Covered California grant of APTC. So we're working together with them through that. As of right now, we believe that we have the resources necessary as we complete the cycle of the limited term that is good through June 30th of 2016. But we'll be coming back, obviously, and presenting the full picture of where things stand with state hearings as a result of the new workload. So with that, I'll open it up for any other questions you might have.
Appreciate it. Senator Stone.
Thank you for your presentation. Just a few questions. And looking at your table on page 29 to 39, state hearing penalties by program for the past 5 years. And in 12-13, it was quite a spike there. A total of almost $4.3 million in penalties. So I'd like to know what happened in that year. And then in fiscal 13-14, it dropped significantly to $600,000. Was that a result of more employees taking care of
Absolutely.
a higher workload? And I'd like to know how many employees were added to get that decreased.
Yes, the 4.2 million was a reflection of the penalties that had accrued through the fiscal year ending on June 30th, 2013. The BCP that was approved, the budget that was approved that became effective July 1, 2013, added 41 positions to State Hearings Division, 24 which were ALJs, and the remainder were support administrative staff. That allowed us to begin the process of being able to cover calendar in a timely way, and that contributed to us to immediately being able to make a difference in terms of meeting the 95% timely rate for each of those categories. By being able to do that, we were able to stay on course to begin that process of bringing down the overall amount as well as the daily rate. And there's a connection and nexus between those two that depends both on how long has a case is late as well as what is that daily rate. And the key thing in what we were saying when we asked for those resources is we get those resources, we will begin that process of being able to go down the road and begin leveling off the daily rate and eventually get us to where we're at $5 to $10. That's what that reflected. So yes, it was the infusion of that. Now the allocation for July 1 of 2014, that was to deal with the Affordable Care Act workload. If that allocation was not made, we would have to redirect the resources that we received on July 1 of 2013. That redirection causes the pressure that we would have had on all the other programs, and that would have meant that we would have not been able to sustain the progress that we're making at this point in bringing down the penalties. So there's the correlation between those two cycles is critical because one is dealing with a new workload, and if we didn't get an augmentation, we would be back to the quicksand, as I put it, and it's very difficult to, once that daily rate starts going up, $250 each month, you quickly hit that $100 per day, and it's really difficult to get it back down.
So is it fair to assume that if you added 41 positions, it took us from 4.3 million down to 595, correct?
Correct.
So I don't know what the average cost of a state employee is, but I'm going to say a fully loaded employee, maybe in this category, $100,000. I'm just making a
Yes,
random number.
approximately about
So-
100.
So that would come out to about $4.1 million, which almost approximates what the penalties were. So in actuality, these programs are costing us really more money to implement than we typically give to the beneficiaries. And it is what it is. I mean, it takes manpower to process IHSS, Medi-Cal, CalFresh, CalWorks. So we need to keep these variables in our mind. It tells you what staffing levels are required and what the costs are. Either we're going to pay the employees to process it, or we're going to pay the penalties to the beneficiaries to make sure they get the benefits.
Yes, and I would point out that the key thing in there is the timeliness, because if we're late in delivering the decision,
Yeah.
that could dramatically impact a person who's waiting
Agreed.
for benefits.
Agreed. I'd rather err on the side and making sure that these people get the services they need. And then just lastly, based on the graph on page 31 to 39, it looks like, based in 2017, we won't be paying any penalties anymore. Am I correct in that assumption?
We will be at 5 to 10, and that's where we want to be, and that assumes that we won't have any significant increase in workload. Yes, that's what that is. So we'll be at a point where we would sustain the existing capacity to remain timely, because that's what's required in order to us to meet that 95%. It's that as you pointed out, staying ahead of this means being able to cover that calendar.
Okay, and then looking at the spike that you alluded to on March of 2015, if you can expand that a little bit, can you tell me why the rates between December 14 and March 15 did what they did when the last two budgets increased additional resources for the departments to reduce the number of late hearing decisions?
That's a daily rate. Then I wanted to bring that back to that's not an increase in the overall total dollars that we're going to be looking at, but it's looking at what are the factors that contribute to, in a given month, not reaching a 95% timeliness.
Okay.
And there's a number of factors that can go into that, and everything from there was too much of a calendar that had to be continued in a given county where there wasn't enough resource to cover that entire calendar by county hearing representatives, because we can only put on a case if the county has the capacity to present the case. And so sometimes it's that. Sometimes it's also, regardless of whether we granted or denied, the other piece of the formula is that 95% timeliness is on all cases. It's not just on granted cases. So if you look at that entire pool, and if that entire pool puts us over 95.1 or 96%, or I'm sorry, 94.9 or 94%, then we're up $2.50. And that's what that is reflecting there, is the blip on that the daily rate went on. So we're, again, focused on how do we bring that back down immediately. If there's a court order that results, and one of the court orders we're monitoring very carefully and working with the Department of Healthcare Services is the Rivera lawsuit. The Rivera lawsuit was brought to challenge the number of unprocessed Medi-Cal applications from the new population that was eligible under Affordable Care Act, known as MAGI, the MAGI piece. There was basically 900,000 at one point that the counties were trying to process. They through the Department of Healthcare Services granting conditional or provisional eligibility, they were able to work that down to about 110,000, and the lawsuit was focused at the end of the day about 85,000 of those. That's the backlog that we're working on right now, and our ability to work that also depends on a partnership with our county hearing specialists and their ability to be prepared to present that. But we're also working with Department of Healthcare Services to ensure that however they're dealing with this, whether it's granting a provisional, and that's how they've approached it, is granting provisional eligibility. The other shoe's going to fall on Affordable Care Act, and hasn't fallen yet, and that is that all of those 900,000 that were provisionally granted, including the Rivera folks that are being processed now, they're going to have to go back and determine who remains eligible and who does not. Those that receive the letters or notices of action saying, we got all the documentation, we reviewed you again, you're found not to be eligible, those are all going to be hearing requests. We've estimated utilizing what has been historically fairly accurate, that 2.5% of that's going to be coming our way of all of those that are outstanding. So that, we'll be back later to talk to you more about how that workload has evolved. It's evolved slowly, but there's reasons for why it's evolved slowly, and we, as state hearings, haven't seen the full impact of that yet.
No?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Romero, for this check-in. It's very helpful. You've obviously been able to achieve a lot, but it seems kind of like the water balloon analogy. You push in and make a dent here, and then you add Medi-Cal expansion and ACA. Of the 41 permanent positions, the breakdown, 24 ALGs, 17 support staff, kind of on follow-up to Senator Stone's question, when you look at the graph on page 32 of the projected reduction of penalties, and maybe Department of Finance has a comment on this or LAO, is there an argument that if there were more invested in the short term in expanding the capacity, more hearing officers, that you could break even faster, you could build down that trajectory faster?
Well, we have 65, remember I mentioned that with the July 1 of 2014, we got an additional 65 positions. And of those, it was 34 additional ALJs. That's what is allowing us to make sure that the bubble doesn't break up beyond a minor blip like this right now. But what I'm pointing out is that resource, and we have slowly brought those resources aboard, partly in response to seeing the what has happened on the implementation part of it. But as of December 31st, we had filled out all of those positions. In our vacancy, we have a total of 232 positions, of which we've filled 211. At one point, that was a lot. We almost had all of them filled, but as a result of retirements, and when you have limited terms, they will leave if a permanent opportunity applies. So we constantly have that phenomena happening where there's a vacancy because they move on to a permanent position. But when we look at that additional resource, right now, it's too early for me to tell you whether it's enough or not. We think it is. Sitting right here today, I believe that's enough for us to, in terms of what we anticipate. But when there's a bubble that happens, a blip will happen like this.
Yeah, and then you mentioned also possibly some regional challenges of, are there problems of recruiting or staffing people in certain parts of the state where you have a bigger backlog than another part of the state?
We have been successful in being able to recruit statewide, and I think we have a fairly good quality pool of candidates that we've been able to fill for ALJs. And I don't think that is as much our concern as far as being able to find the judges, because what we do is hire the best, whoever they may be, and then we use different modalities for putting on hearings. We do in-person, video, and telephone. So a combination of being able to do hearings in all of those modalities allows us the flexibility to not just have to be focused on where we have or deficiencies with the candidate pool in a given region.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions from members? Okay. Thank you very much for the overview. I had a question that I'll follow up with offline, just because I'm trying to be mindful of the hour and what we've got left to do. Thank you. We'll move on to the budget change proposal, and I'll take public comment, I'm sorry, after this, for the overview and this next budget change proposal. I should have told you, I apologize. So again, the State Hearings Appeal Case Management System Project, budget change proposal number 2.